Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today we are covering Monsters on Board, the 7th Kickstarter game from Final Frontier Games. Final Frontier Games is known for a bunch of Kickstarter games, and I was going to say most notably, but they're really a lot. They've done Merchant's Cove, they've done Coloma, they've done Rise to Nobility, Robin Hood the Merry Men, Rise to Nobility again, and finally Cavern Tavern. They have done a bunch of games, all well received to different degrees. I think the most well received so far from the ones that are out is Coloma, and then Merchant's Cove has a lot of hype. They had a huge asymmetric thing going on with it. Really, lots of people were very intrigued by this one. I believe this was their highest funded Kickstarter to date, although I could be wrong. I didn't actually look at every single Kickstarter. That being said, going back to Monsters on Board, what is Monsters on Board? Let's talk about the brief gameplay overview. Let's talk about the pledge levels. Should you back it? Why or why not? And let's go into it. So to begin with, Monsters on Board is a much lighter game, or lighter seeming game from it's a dice drafting game with art by the Maiko. This game ultimately revolves around dice drafting in the most literal sense I have seen yet, which honestly I'm super intrigued by. Normally in dice drafting games, the way it works is there's a common pool of dice, and then you just pick out one die at a time from a common pool. There's no actual drafting in the typical sense that you might be used to if you think of drafting the way I do as a card-based mechanic. But this game is definitely mixing that up by, let me see if I can find something here that shows it, but they basically have, I don't see the one over here, but basically what they have is they have these little monster mobiles over here, these fear mobiles, which the dice are pressed into, and then this little car goes in front of each player. You pick a die, and then it rotates. You pick a die, you rotates, you pick a die. This is dice drafting in the most literal sense, and I think it's adorable. Not only do I think it's adorable, it's how I like drafting. Drafting from a common pool is nice, it's okay, but to me, personally speaking, it lacks the same tension that dice drafting has. That being said, my enthusiasm is still tempered by the fact that at the end of the day, these are dice. Dice drafting in general as a mechanic, while I do enjoy it, does tend to have less of the tension of regular drafting because you don't have all these amazing, cool, fun abilities. You usually are limited to either numbers or icons, which tends to limit the degree of tenseness that goes into a draft when you're playing Seven Wonders, Blood Rage, Bunny Kingdom, and you're passing something to your opponent that might seriously help them. Dice drafting certainly has that, but historically for me it has had less tension. That being said, please note I am commenting in general on the mechanic and obviously not on the specific game, as I have not played this game Monsters on Board, and therefore I can't comment on whether they have managed to achieve that. I will say they are pulling a fairly common mechanic in dice drafting, in the sense that higher numbers will be better in some ways, but lower numbers are better in others. And more specifically in this game, that's the higher numbers tend to have less other icons, less other abilities on those dice. So there still is a choice at play. This is not a simple aspect of choosing the higher color, higher number. The higher number matters, the higher color matters, and the icons on the dice matter. And like I said, it's drafting in the sense that it's actually going around, so color me interested. Obviously, it doesn't have that hidden hand element of drafting because it's all visible on the table, but at the same time, that can actually add to the tension. And if you watch Rahdo's run through, you can see how that impacts the decisions being made. Knowing what dice are coming your way, knowing what dice you're passing to your opponent, knowing all of that can certainly affect the strategic decisions being made, which potentially I can see being a very good thing. All that being said, I'm going too long on about drafting, probably because drafting is my personal favorite game mechanic, and therefore I am most called in by what this game is doing differently in dice drafting and whether that's for me. Past that, the game really comes down to trying to scare up the most spook juice. You're going to be doing that through cards, through abilities, through trying to achieve goals, sending these monsters into the villages, and all of that's going to be run effectively by the dice that you're drafting. And so that's what it is. It's a seemingly lighter dice drafting game in which you try to achieve your goals while passing, here's the little thing I was looking for, while passing those dice from player to player, and each player taking their dice, and it has adorable little miniatures, although now is probably a good time to talk about those pledge levels because those miniatures are variable. It depends what you're getting. So let's talk about the pledge levels. Talk about what you're getting in this game. So to begin with, over here we have we have access to the pledge manager at $1. We have the retail pledge at $5, and at $54 you start by getting the standard version with the unlocked applicable stretch goals. Seemingly they are stretch goals that would go into the retail edition as well. In general, if you've watched my videos, you know this by now. The standard editions are usually not a good reference point, and not a good buy because they will be cheaper in retail, and 33 people probably don't know that or have decided they want it anyway, but this is this is the least chosen pledge level so far, and I agree with that choice. What I'm going to do here, and I'm going to do it for a lot of this campaign when I compare, I'm going to pick Coloma to compare to, primarily because Merchant's Cove, while the most recent Kickstarter, is not yet out, and so I want to compare it to the most recent Kickstarter that is out, although I will bring up the rest of them as well. And so looking at Coloma over here had a similar, where are we? They had a similar pledge level with the $54, same price point, although the shipping is slightly more expensive in this one. Using US shipping as a base, Coloma's shipping was $10 for these options, and Monsters on Board is $15, so there certainly is a slight difference there. But if you look at Coloma, looking at Miniature Market, for instance, Coloma over Miniature Market is $48.99, contrasted with the $54, or more specifically $64 you are paying. So in general, if you're getting a standard retail edition with no extras, same rules usually apply. It will be cheaper in retail. Is it worth that extra $17 to get it now? That's a personal decision. To get it earlier, if you want to, by all means go for it. But in general, if you're just getting a retail edition, I recommend waiting. There's more time to see reviews, more time to see if it's for you, more time for that Kickstarter hype to cool off. It's rarely worth getting a retail edition on Kickstarter when you can just get it cheaper later. Obviously, international changes the equation because I'm talking more the US market. International availability always changes that equation and the financial decisions involved. From there, we have the deluxe pledge level, which is $69 for the Monsters on Board deluxe version, and then on the Final Frontier and on Coloma, it is also $69. Now, before we go into that, I forgot, let's go into the actual what you're getting for the standard edition. The standard edition, you're getting the main board, the rule book, the 4 player boards. These Fearmobiles are included. We have the 78 custom dice, the Spiderjack dice bag, all these things here, fairly basic stuff, and this is the important one, 60 monster standees. Okay, that's what you're getting here. In the deluxe edition, before we comment on the price value or whatnot, you get all these miniatures. Now, I don't know about you, I am getting a huge, adorable little Hotel in Transylvania 3 vibe from these guys. I mean, not everyone, but like this werewolf for sure, the General Frankenstein, all in all, I'm getting a very strong Hotel Transylvania vibe from there, which is adorable because I think the art in that movie is adorable. So, I mean, this art by the art in this game is by the Maiko, who I absolutely love everything he does. Basically everything he's ever touched I have liked, so good choice there. And they've used him in the past. They've used him for Merchant's Cove, Coloma. I believe they used him for the rest as well, just looking at a glance. So I think they've used him for basically everything, which is a good choice because as soon as you put Maiko on a board game, I am interested. It also comes with 36 miniature grunts, 24 miniature minions, and that's the extras. So for $20, or not 20, for $15, these are the extras you're getting, which are basically a miniature upgrade kit full of these extra cute little adorable miniatures to replace the standees. And the standees, by the way, these art standees actually look pretty cool as well. So that might come down to your personal preference as well as that $15 in terms of what you want. In terms of the value aspect, let's jump into that. So again, comparing it to Coloma, it's a little bit tougher on this one because comparing it to Coloma, the price is the same. Again, shipping still went up by $5, so take that into account. But Coloma, in terms of the deluxe edition of Coloma, if we look at the price history on Board Game Geek, this is one that generally has done a decent job holding its value. If you look at the deluxe edition, even from the original when it first started selling to until even now, most recently, in general, initially it was getting above its value. So if you got the game, if you got the deluxe edition, it wasn't for you, you were able to get basically all your money back on that edition. You're able to sell it, get your pledge level and shipping. Even now, you potentially can, although the market is a little more mixed now. If you look at the sales now, you'll see sales anywhere from $60 to $90 for that deluxe edition, meaning you might be losing a little bit plus shipping, or you still might be able to get your full pledge level back. It depends on what the marketplace looks like at any given day and whether someone is currently willing to buy it, but it's still a pretty decent back, especially considering the time frame that has passed. So if you wanted the deluxe edition on Coloma, it was a much better back and you were able to get your money back. At the end of the day, it's not apples to apples though, and you have to keep that in mind because I'm going to find over here the deluxe edition. So what we unlocked, let me see if I can find it over here. The deluxe edition for the Coloma gave you everything from above, plus clay chips, custom made nuggets, custom score markers, the metal player marker, and whatnot. So this is what this one gave you. So you have to ask yourself, is that going to have the same general appeal as these miniature upgrades? Is that going to be a better appeal to the mass market, to not? When you're trying to sell this copy later, will it hold its value? And I believe the answer is yes on the deluxe edition. I believe that these miniatures are adorable enough and people will want them that it'll be worth that extra money, and you'll be able to sell this for at or above its value if you find this is a game that's not for you. So it's not by no means is it a guarantee. It's definitely a risk factor involved because it's not pure apples to apples, but you may well be able to get your money back. And now is a good time I guess let's jump from here into the should you back it, should you not. So the should you back it is a little bit of a tough one, and here's why. Here's all the elements going into that decision. So to begin with, don't back the retail edition unless there's an international component involved. That makes sense for you to financially get that one. In terms of the deluxe edition, and there is a third pledge level, by the way, with an expansion, we'll come back to that. In terms of the deluxe edition is for sure a safer back. But the best comparison point is looking at Final Frontier's previous games and the deluxe edition involved there, and that's where Coloma, being the most recent example, is one that still does a decent job holding its value even today. Decent job, not amazing, but you do want to look at Rise to Nobility and Robin Hood and Merry Men as well, because those are examples of ones that they definitely had that initial market hype and held their value initially for the first few months, but as reviews came in and as they were getting mixed reviews, not bad reviews to be very clear, all their games have done fairly well and have been fairly well received, but as you pay attention to those mixed reviews and how well they're doing, the price on those didn't hold as well over time. Which brings me to my usual recommendation of, if you are getting this game, because we don't know where this game lies. We don't know if it's going to be light, accessible gameplay that is immediately appealing and people are going to like it, or whether it's going to be a bit of a dud, whether people are going to say, hey, just get, that other $30 dice drafting game instead. That's better. It provides better gameplay. It's lighter. It's cheaper. We don't yet know those answers. We know that Rado put out a review and he liked it, but we don't know the general audience as far as how well this will be received. And so to that end, my recommendation with this would be, get it. See if you like it, play it right away, take that shrink off day one, get it to the table, see if it's a good fit for you, see if it's a good fit for you, your family, your game group, all that. And if you like it, awesome. I mean, it's adorable, it's cute, great art, great components. Final Frontier in general is a fantastic company. But if it's not for you, if you find this game is not one that you want to stay in your collection, then try to get it to the table and or sell it in the first 3 months, or sell it or trade it or whatnot in the first month, the first 2 months, the first 3 months. Do it while the market is still hot. Do it while people still want this game. And again, by the way, that advice is always true. In any Kickstarter I cover, playing it right away and then flipping it while the market is hot is always the advice I would give. That being said, it is usually more meaningful or less meaningful depending on the Kickstarter at hand. Games like CMON tend to hold their value over time pretty easily. Games like Awakened Realms or Mythic Games, they tend to be companies that hold their value very well over time. And then there are ones that are definitely more of a risk and you want to get to the table sooner rather than later, because at the end of the day, games are something that everyone's hyped about, everyone's excited about, everyone loves that new Kickstarter. They see people on Facebook posting pictures of playing Monsters on Board and the copy they just got, and they're so excited and they want to hunt down a copy. And then 6 months later, sometimes that game is still hyped, and sometimes it isn't. And again, this is nothing new. I say this in every video, but I say this in every video because if you're new to this channel, I have to emphasize that again and again and again. If you are trying to get the best bang for your buck on Kickstarter, sell those games right away if they're not for you. If they're for you, by all means, keep them as long as possible. And from there, let's touch upon the expansion, the Monster Pack. And this is where it gets a little trickier, because the Monster Pack is a $25 expansion being sold for $20 here. And that's not, I mean, if this is going to be available in retail, that's not the best price for the expansion. I haven't seen anything as far as deluxe aspects in the expansion. It could be I missed it, but I should note now, I actually have a fairly packed week right now. I'm trying to get a lot of catch up because I'm preparing for the high holidays, so I will have less time. So I did a little bit less research on some of the things I did this week, and the expansion is where I compromised here. But I did not see anything as far as any exclusivity on the expansion, which means $20 for $25. You can probably just get it in retail. You can probably get it in a niche market down the road or wherever. But if you want to get it now, and this, by the way, is by far the most picked pledge level, which I understand, then take a look at the expansion, see if it's for you. You're not talking about huge amounts of monetary difference. And again, same idea, that FOMO aspect of selling it right away will also impact the expansion when somebody is particularly looking for the whole deluxe pack, which does seem to be the most popular. So it's a little bit more of a mixed bag on the expansion. Probably not the best price, probably will still hold its value on the secondary market if you find that Monsters on Board is not a game for you. As far as what I am doing, I am not yet sure if I'm interested. I like dice drafting. I like how they are incorporating even more of a drafting element to dice drafting. I like how the gameplay does look pretty adorable, pretty light and accessible, and I don't think it looks too light. It looks like there's enough depth to actually be strategically rewarding, but I don't yet know. I, for myself, plan on keeping an eye on it throughout the campaign, because even though I'm fairly confident it'll hold its value, I just don't know if it's a game for me. I don't know if it's a game that I want to pay $89 for to have on my shelf. So for myself, I'm keeping an eye on it throughout the campaign, see what else they're unlocking, see what other stretch goals they have. They're about to unlock dual layer stretch boards, dual layer boards, I believe. So far expansion wise, stretch goal wise, we have new arch monsters, linen finish, new Ghosts, Limited Finish on the cards and boards, 4 new Prophecy cards, UV Spot on boxes, and we're about to unlock dual layer player boards, which is always a big thing in these games, especially games where you're moving things along a board. Dual layer player boards are one of the fantastic things I love about Kickstarter, but how we keep getting these boards. I mean, you get them in non-Kickstarter too, but ultimately, that's about it. So, basically, that's where I am. I think it's overall a good back. The shipping is a little higher. I think it's still overall a safe back, particularly at the deluxe version, but do try to sell it right away. This is not a game you're going to be making any fantastic amounts of money on, but it's also one where it's fairly safe that it will hold its value. Final Frontiers is a fantastic company with a lot of deluxeified, beautiful games on the table. All of them, or most of them, with art by Michael, who I really like, and overall, that is basically Final Frontiers Monsters on Board. I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, you can subscribe down below, any of that stuff. And until next time, have a good one.